Packers have a chance to walk away from Lambeau Field on Thursday night with sole possession of the lead in the NFC North. And yeah, it's early in the season, but a game like this one against the favorite in the division can mean a big, big difference later on down the season, especially as we're looking like we might be able to contend for a playoff spot. So these are the things that the Packers absolutely must do on Thursday night to make this a game and come away with the victory. So first off, you got to get pressure on Jared Goff. This guy has historically kind of crumbled under pressure. More so when he was in Los Angeles than he has so far in his short tenure in Detroit. But even going back to last year, when Jared Goff was under pressure, his completion percentage dropped 20%. And he threw nearly as many interceptions as he did touchdowns. So get some pressure on Goff, force him to make plays and identify where he needs to go with the ball quick. Because if we can get pressure on him and get him off his spot and uncomfortable, it's going to have a negative effect overall on the entirety of the Lions offense. An offense which loves to throw the ball short. So the next thing that the Packers defense absolutely needs to do is what they can't do really, I guess, is they cannot sit back in zone coverage 8-10 yards off the receivers that these cornerbacks are covering. The Lions throw 72% of their passes 9 yards and below, and that includes behind the line of scrimmage. So you cannot just give them that all day, which we saw, against the Falcons. We saw again against the Saints. It's a staple of Joe Barry's concept on the defense and what he really likes to do for whatever reason, and it is much to the chagrin of Packers fans worldwide. But we need to get up in the face of these receivers, especially because the guys they got aren't huge physical guys. They're quick, shifty guys, and we need to keep them under control, like the St. Browns, the Khalif Raymonds, the Jahmyr Gibbs coming out of the backfield. Those guys can make great plays in space and make you miss and really make it hurt. So we need to be up and on them before they can really get the ball with some space to make us move. On those 72% of throws that Goff targets 9 yards and under, his average depth of target is just 4.2 yards. So it's not like he's even pushing it down in that range a little bit. He really does like to throw the ball extremely short. So we need to be up there, and that's going to mean things like bubble screens, slants, a lot of that stuff as well. But that's not to say that Goff isn't having success down the field, though. And while it's a small sample size, so far this season, throwing the ball 10 yards and deeper, Jared Goff is graded 90 and above per PFF on all of those. Granted, it's like 21 targets or something. He's had specific success against the deep left corner of the field, 20 yards deeper. He's gone 4 or 5 in throws to that particular window. But we need to get up there and get on these guys, but then also be disciplined in our zones as well. And really, I think those deeper shots have been throws to guys like Sam Laporta coming off those tight end positions. So that's really going to be more incumbent on the safety position to cover those for the Packers defense. Heading over to the offensive side, we're likely to see some young tackles out there playing for us. Bakhtiari's out. Zach Tom is questionable. So at a minimum, we're going to see Rasheed Walker out there. And while he did improve from week 2 to week 3, he's still young and doesn't have a lot of reps out there. And this Lions pass rush kind of got their feet under them last week against the Falcons. They ended up having 7 sacks. If you haven't seen it yet, I had some of the stats earlier in a video this week. But we can't let them get back on track with that pass rush again against us. So they really need to, whether it's chipping with a tight end or chipping with a back, or just keeping an extra guy in on protection. I think we need to protect those tackles, especially if you also have Josh Nyman out there who hasn't played a lot of snaps this season so far. So get them a little bit of help. You do not want Aiden Hutchinson to just rain hell on these young tackles out there for the Packers. Sticking on the offensive side, another thing we need to do is we just need to trust Jordan Love. He's been turning the ball loose. He's really like decisive with his reads and where he's going with the ball. He's been a little bit late on a few things here and there, but he's generally let it rip, and he's gone, even into tight coverage with that. And on Sunday, when we really needed it, and there was basically no support from the run game, he went out there and just took it over. So we need to trust that Jordan Love, if it gets into a game where basically it's a dumpster fire in the run game, we need to give the ball to Jordan Love and let him go out there and make plays. Is there going to be a higher likelihood that, there's maybe a turnover worthy play in there if we have to do that? Yes, by nature. But what's the difference of doing that or going 3 and out because we continually run the ball and we're gaining pennies on the dollar in that run game? So trust Jordan Love, put the ball in his hand, and he's shown that he can make plays to lead us to victory. Back onto the defensive side, I think another thing we need to do is contain Jahmyr Gibbs. David Montgomery is questionable. He may or may not play, but even if he does play, I don't expect that, coming right back, he's going to take a bunch of those carries back again. He's probably going to have some limited duty there, and that's where, you're going to see more of those carries go to Jahmyr Gibbs, and he can do to this Packers defense what Bijan Robinson did to us in week 2 from the Falcons. He can torch us in space and really just make guys look foolish. So we do not want to let that happen. So we need to, keep an eye on him and really play good, sound, fundamental defense, staying in their lane, staying in their zones, making sure that we're covering up the gaps in that running game to prevent him from just getting into space and making us really feel the pain. So the last thing I wanted to talk about a little bit was just the penalties. We need to get back on track with penalties. We cannot have the same mental errors. And then, we understand holding calls are going to happen here and there. There's basically holding on every play of the game. So naturally there's going to be some holding that takes place. It's the false starts. It's the illegal shifts or illegal motions, things of that nature on the offensive line, neutral zone infractions on defense. These mental mistakes where it's just a lapse in focus for these young players on the Packers team, those are the things we need to eliminate. Historically, in Matt LaFleur's career, we've been towards the top of the league in efficiency, essentially, from a penalty perspective. We've been generally in the top 10 for the least penalized teams. And we need to get back on that track again, because this having 11 penalties for 90 yards last week was not the deal. And that's the kind of shit that we cannot have happen to us and expect to win games. It really came down to just almost blind luck and, really just sheer will on Jordan Love's part for us to come back into that game and win it. But notice when we did that, we weren't shooting ourselves in the foot. So we have to clean up the penalties, and then we can continue to win. But that's all I've got going into this game. I think if the Packers can do these things on Thursday night, there's a solid chance that we're going to walk away with the sole lead for the NFC North.